that men do. So oftentimes you're going to have, less investable wealth just at its core. So then you go through a divorce, and so often I'll know people's husbands, and very seldom do they meet with their wives. And the wives were largely disengaged. And I think that, financial, power is really what I think is important to note, meaning having financial freedom, having an understanding of your situation, even if you're never going to get divorced, I think at a minimum, people should really be mindful of. What I think too is that from a investing standpoint, women tend to invest for safety and security, not necessarily performance. I think when you get divorced, your budget completely changes. You have to figure out what are your income sources, what are you going to need, but then also how much risk do you need to take? It's very comforting to sit on cash and bonds and kind of just, view it through that lens, but I can give you all sorts of statistical data about why you shouldn't do that. So I think that, just in looking at women as a group, divorced women, but just women in general, I think that there's a real need for engagement. I think there's a need for education. I laugh because I never thought I would be a financial advisor. I was a cello performance major at the University of Michigan. I switched to history and philosophy, and then my dad basically said, hey, I know you want to play your cello and read Nietzsche, but you need to get a real job. So he sets up an internship at Merrill Lynch, and at the time, I had to read a book called Girls Just Want to Have Funds to even understand the difference between a stock and a bond and a mutual fund. And so I say that because sometimes I think it's very intimidating if you don't feel like you have the knowledge, or you don't know the vernacular, or you don't feel comfortable asking questions. Find someone that you feel comfortable asking those questions to, and understand that most people, aren't experts in this area. And there's a huge learning curve, but you don't have to be an expert. You just need to find the right team. Just like I don't know legalese, I would go to someone like Nancy to help me with that. And so I think knowledge is power. I think that financial freedom is power. And I think there are no right answers. It's just getting a start down a path to a financial plan that can be amended and adapted to whatever your life circumstances are. And just feel comfortable asking those questions. So I'll leave it at that. I really think it's great what you're doing and putting together, these teams and helping women through these transitions, and I'll pass it along to you.
Thank you. So I will start by saying how I got into being a divorce coach. I have a master's in organizational behavior, which means after I graduated, I became a consultant helping Fortune 500 through corporate change. And I really enjoyed working with the CEOs and the C-suite on how we were going to go through this change, how we're going to communicate it to the employees, what kind of culture, how do we be strategic and smart. And then my career went in different paths, and I spent a lot of time raising my children, and I also became a full-time patient. Proud to say I'm a cancer survivor. So during that time, I went back for my coaching degree and got trained in a lot of different philosophies, and then became a certified divorce coach. And that happened because after the breakdown of my own marriage, after 18 years of marriage, I realized how overwhelming this trauma is. And having had a master's at the London School of Economics, I too was still completely overwhelmed because I did not pay the day-to-day. And I had not been a big part of our income. And it can shock you. And no matter how much money you have, a divorce is separating into two homes. So everyone will typically feel that in some regard. So I used my education and my experience in overcoming some difficult scenarios to now help women be the CEO of their own divorce. And the reason I like to partner with these professionals who I'm so proud to sit here amongst is because it's not just financial, and it's not just legal, and it's not just emotional. It is all of those things in a chaotic situation. And so I truly believe by working with a therapist or a coach like myself, we can help you prepare for your meetings with your lawyers and your financial planners. We can help prepare you with those difficult conversations, such as even sharing with your spouse that you want a divorce. I can help with how we're going to tell the children. And then after we get some of this really big data, what is our current state financially? What is our future liabilities? And where are we legally? How do we digest that? A lot of the women I'm working with have never had a budget. Some of them, just like the two paraprofessionals, they handed that over. So it doesn't matter where you sit, but once you become the full responsible adult in your home, how are we going to get through that? And what I like to say is during my cancer, and I've coached cancer patients, and during divorce, is that with the right team, we can make a conscious decision about who we want to be in the face of this. Nobody gets married to expect to be in this room today. And I understand I was the first divorce of my family. My parents, thank God, are here, and they've been married 55 years. So I understand how scary it is. I understand how you're breaking new ground sometimes. But the important thing is that we learn who we were when we chose that partner, that we understand and have compassion for ourselves, for perhaps the relationship we were in as the marriage maybe ended, and that we begin to create new routines and rituals that will allow our mind and our emotion and our spirit to be as solid as we can during this storm. And so for many of my clients, it's about accountability. When they say, oh, yoga makes me feel good, well, I make them accountable for how many days they're going to do it, and they text me when they're done. If walking makes them feel better, or exercise, or getting their resume ready and beginning a new career, wherever you're at, I'm there to help them build it out, make a plan. And the important thing is that we first let go and we heal. And many people might say, well, nobody died, but in fact, that union has died. And whoever you were in that union, it influenced all of your decisions, right? Everything you did. And so while this is the end of that union, I like to say this is a reunion with yourself. What is at your core? Who is your essence before you became a wife, and perhaps before you became a mother? What lights you up? What makes you happy? How are you going to find joy in this next chapter? And I've coached countless of women, and I can tell you stories after stories of where I help them in the process. But the beautiful thing is, with the right village and the right professionals and the right friends and family, you can get through this, and you can recreate a life that may be more beautiful than you ever dreamt. And so when you were engaged and you were planning in your head what this perfect marriage and life would look like, perhaps it was a white picket fence with 2 kids and a dog. Well, now we are going to say goodbye to those dreams and let go of what that future vision was. And that can take time. And that is a mourning and a loss. And then we get to recreate. We get to build a new house, a new vision, brick by brick. And you get to decide who comes through that fence, who comes in that door. And the most important thing is that you have a loving, safe home, secure home. That you're in a home where you feel safe. You're in a home that provides love. And I promise you, doing that, you can do that on your own and live a beautiful life. I am happily now divorced and happily single. And while you may have never envisioned a life for me, a single woman at 50, I'm here to say it can be a beautiful new reawakening. Life is really short, and there's no reason to stay if something is taxing, if something's not serving you, if there's a relationship that is toxic. The best thing is to let each other go. But we work through that because, of course, there's a million circumstances. And I have a lot of clients who end up back together after the process of deciding if this is where we're going to go. So it's not black or white. It's a journey all to yourself. And I personally found a lot of comfort in my own therapist and in a divorce group. So that's why I'm so passionate about the work I do. I was getting divorced during COVID, so my therapist put together a group for us virtually of these 3 or 4 of us that were going through a divorce at this time. And we would talk, some of us in the car, when you're homeschooling and we're all locked in, and some from our closets, some in the bathroom with the shower on. But we really, seeing each other, holding each other accountable is why I do what I do, because that was my life raft. That's allowed me to persevere. So in addition to one-on-one coaching, which I offer, and all of you a complimentary session, of course, I also hold virtual groups, because I do believe by being in community, by being amongst other women who have been through what you've been through, they can truly see you and they can hold space for you. And so while every divorce is different, every family is different, it is really powerful to be amongst your community. So I thank you all for coming, and we applaud everyone for discussing the possibility of divorce. It is a very hard chapter, but if you're in the wrong relationship, it is something worth pursuing. And I want to thank both of you for honoring me with being on the panel today.